in Schedule 18, Amendment 148, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I rise to move amendment number 148 and speak to 150 and 152, also in my name. There are a number of interesting amendments in this group, but I intend to stick to my last broadly and speak only to the ones in my name. I did have a number of amendments to this schedule. It's been renumbered. It was Schedule 17. It's now Schedule 18 when we were in committee, but I've decided to stick with just these three. I apologise that there are three. Of course, in fact, there's really only one, but the schedule is drafted in such a way that everything has to be said three times. So, in fact, there's really only one. And it goes, well, but the amendment effectively relates to high-protein, low-sugar bars. Noble Lords may wonder why I have developed an interest in high-protein, low-sugar bars, but to answer that, I'm going to tell you a story. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a story about a real business, and then I'm going to ask my noble friend a question. So, in 2015, in response to a government campaign for confectioners to develop new alternatives to oversweet snacks, a husband and wife living near Solihull set up a company and produced a product. It's called Grenade. In fact, its proper name is the Grenade Carb Killer. It is a high-protein, low-sugar bar. It's not something, frankly, my lords, that I would particularly want to eat myself. It may be something that other noble lords find equally not very high on their agenda. It certainly isn't marketed at children. It is, in fact, marketed largely and taken up largely by young people who enjoy going to the gym, exercising, doing all the things that my noble friend Lord Bethell illustrates himself doing on Twitter so frequently, plunging into cold pools in the middle of winter. And what they want, my lord, and perhaps my noble friend is an example of such, what he may want is an alternative to a snack on the go that's full of protein and isn't going to give you too much sugar. So that's really what this was aimed at, not at children in any sense at all. Now, what is it that allows the manufacturers of this product to call it a high-protein, low-sugar bar? And the answer to that is, it is Regulation EC number 1924/2006 of the European Parliament and of the Council. And this defines what it is you may call particular types of food. And it says that in order to be able to call it low sugar, it means the product must contain no more than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams for solid foods. And in order to call it high protein, you have to have at least 20% of the energy value of the food has to be provided by protein. And of course, the Grenade Carb Killer was carefully crafted to match these regulations so that they could call it a high-protein, low-sugar food. And the product is a success. It is heavily promoted online and on social media. There are 82 staff, not counting the manufacturing staff. The net sales are now about £35 million a year. So what does this bill do to them? I take them only as an example that I'm aware of, because they've approached me and they've explained their business to me. The first thing the bill does is to say that the criteria set out in the EU directive will effectively cease to apply. So the parameters by which they've created their product will no longer have any effect. This has been confirmed to me in what has turned out to be quite a full correspondence with my noble friend Lady Penn, for which I want to say how very grateful I am to the effort she has put into this correspondence, and I'm grateful for that. The second thing is the government will now consult on whether products will be allocated to one of 15 groups set out in guidance, draft guidance. And it's by no means clear to the Grenade Company which group, these are very broad groups, to which group their product might be allocated. This is phase one of a process, as I understand it. Assuming they are allocated to one of those groups, one of which, for example, is sweet biscuits. So not all food will be allocated to a group. I mean, a chicken breast is not going to be allocated to one of these groups because that isn't what's in scope, but biscuits and things like that might be. If they are allocated to it, they will then be rated against the nutrient profiling model. Now, noble lords may think that at this point we could just see some light, because the very high level of protein in the product should be able to get them racing through the nutrient profiling model. But no, because what the bill requires is that there should be a protein cap in the nutrient profile modelling applied to the 15 groups. Now, this is because the government is terrified that companies might put protein in the cornflakes and get round the regulations that way. So the fact that they have a large amount of protein doesn't help them very much at all because of the protein cap. Well, now, my noble friend may say all of this is mildly fantastical because have I not noticed that there is an exception for companies with fewer than 250 employees? And as I said earlier, this company has 82 employees. But the problem there is that 2 years ago, so successful are they, that they were taken over by a larger company. And it is now completely unclear to them, and it's not clear from the government, whether the 250 cap applies to them as a standalone subsidiary or is to be applied to the larger group of which they are now part. Nobody knows. It also has some rather bizarre consequences. It means that the food that is going to be risky and dangerous would not have been risky if it continued to be produced by a small company. They're perfectly okay, as long as they kept their employment down. I thought we wanted employment to go up. And the second thing, of course, is that no small company manufacturing compliant food will ever dare to be taken over by a larger company in the future. So this has a real consequence for business practice. So the only hope the company has is to reformulate its products, which is expensive, and as we all know, takes a long time and can go awry. Noble lords may remember the episode of Cherry Coke, which was a disaster for the Coca-Cola company when they reformulated their product. And indeed, but what criteria are Grenade going to reformulate their product against anyway? Because nobody knows. And this sort of thing is being replicated up and down the country. In the meantime, zealous lords have other amendments in this group saying that what the government really needs to do, so clear is its understanding of business requirements, what the government really needs to do is move ahead more rapidly with this and have a hard deadline against which it must all be brought into effect, irrespective of the consequences for jobs, for businesses, and for prosperity. And all of this to save 3 calories a day. So that's my story. And my question to my noble friend is, when I speak to the Grenade Company tomorrow, and I'm sure they're watching this now on parliamentlive.tv, what comfort can I offer them?